Yo, 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 what's cracking, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Better Audio Quality Than Video Quality. I'm your host, Julian Andros, and today we're going to be talking about linguistics. Honestly, YouTube is way too much of a hobby to me now for me to care even like the slightest bit about channel consistency or, upload consistency or any of those things. So if this doesn't really tickle your fancy, now is your chance to click off. All right, so for those of y'all who stayed, taking it you're pretty interested in language or linguistics, accents, dialects, something along those lines, right? So today I'm going to be teaching you guys about the upstate New York accent. The key word in that sentence is upstate. I know most of you people who aren't from the Northeast, when you guys think of New York, you think of one thing. I already know what it is. You know what it is too. But I'm here to tell you there's actually a lot more to New York State than just the city. And I would know because I live in upstate New York. Once you go out of the city and you start traveling up the state a little bit, you realize there's this beautiful geography with so many mountains and hiking trails and lakes. And it's just a really gorgeous countryside. And then you have the more, urbanized centers in upstate New York as well. Albany, Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo. Now, me personally, I'm from one of the upstate cities, so I'm not really from the countryside, but I've had the pleasure to travel down there. And one of the things that makes upstate New York a bit distinct from downstate is actually our accent. And it definitely is different because where I live, I can pinpoint if someone is from the city versus if someone's from Canada versus if someone's from closer to the Midwest or if they're from New England. Like, I can hear those differences. So we definitely got our own little thing going on. And despite being in the same state, the accent is actually more connected to the Midwest phonetically than it is to downstate. So yeah, let me stop wasting your time. Let me just break down what exactly the characteristics of this accent are. So one of the defining features of the Great Lakes accent as a whole is called the Northern Cities vowel shift. For those of you who don't know, vowel shift is basically when certain vowel sounds in the mouth start to get pronounced differently, and it happens in a way where it causes all the other vowel sounds around them to start moving around and changing. And this is one of the main things that can lead to very distinct accents and, very localizable ways of speaking. So what is this Northern Cities vowel shift? Well, here, I'm going to move my body over to the side a little bit, and I'm going to put up a nice little diagram right here of a human tongue. I know it doesn't look like a human tongue, but just bear with me. Basically, this little chart represents where your tongue lives in your mouth when you're making certain sounds. So if you look down here all the way in the back right corner, you can see there is the vowel sound used in words like lot and hot, like, it's real hot outside today. For most American dialects, that sound lives really far back in the mouth, so it's going to sound like lot or like hot. And a peculiar little thing that's happening in a lot of different American dialects is that vowel sound is actually merging with another vowel sound, the sound used in words like cloth and thought. But in the Great Lakes area, this is actually one of the regions where that merger is not taking place because we take that vowel sound and we move it forward a lot. If I were to over-exaggerate the accent, it would be like, man, it's real hot outside today. Spoiler alert, we don't actually sound like that, though. That's what they all say, am I right? No, we actually do this. We really do talk like that. And some people got it more pronounced than others, but most people that I've talked to in this area usually do push that O vowel really forward. And so then what that ends up causing is us moving up our A vowel. There might be a case to be made that it's the other way around, that actually the A vowel moved first and then the O moved forward to compensate, but it doesn't matter. Either way, we do both of these things, and we do them frequently. So essentially, the A sound in words like trap and bag, that's going to get moved up. So we don't say trap and bag, we say trap, bag. Once again, that's a little bit of an over-exaggeration, but you're going to hear that all over in this area. And so then the next thing that happens in this shift is the E vowel, which you can see the A vowel is kind of like running straight into that E vowel now. So in order to differentiate those two sounds, what we end up doing is we move our E vowel back. So the phrase, I'm doing better than yesterday, will start to sound like, I'm doing better than yesterday. That E almost starts to sound a little bit more like a U to some people who are listening to it. And that causes yet another change in the pronunciation of words where the actual U vowel in words like strut gets moved back even further. So that way now it sounds like strut. I gotta go catch the bus. I'm gonna be late. So yeah, that whole vowel shift that I just described is taking place all across the Great Lakes area, and it is actually spreading downstate now into New York City. If you listen to different, YouTubers and news anchors and stuff like that from the city, you'll probably be able to hear some vowel shift characteristics in their speech. So now you might be wondering, if this vowel shift is getting spread downstate, what exactly separates the upstate New York accent from downstate? So this is a really good question, and I've traveled downstate and I've lived upstate, and I have noticed two key characteristics that separate the upstate New York area from downstate New York. Those two things are the amount of the vowel shift that's in our speech and the pronunciation of the thought vowel. So allow me to elaborate. Basically, the more upstate you go, the more you're going to hear that vowel shift. Even though it has spread downstate, it isn't there to the same extent, and it isn't there with as many people in the area as it is upstate. And now for the second reason I gave, the pronunciation of the thought vowel. A lot of you guys might be very familiar with that stereotypical New Yorker way of pronouncing the word coffee. You might hear a New Yorker talking and they'll say, "Yeah, I just bought a coffee." So what they're doing there is they're raising that vowel in coffee, and they're moving it more towards the center of their mouth. And the way some of them say it, it almost sounds like it's becoming a diphthong. In upstate New York, we do raise that thought vowel a little bit. So, if you just listen to the way I pronounce it, it is more raised than what you're going to hear in other areas of the country. But it's not to the same extent that you hear in New York City. So one phrase that I really like, which points out this characteristic in particular, is hot dog. So the way I said it right there, that was my default way of saying hot dog. Like, that's just how I say it. If you go downstate, it might sound a little bit more like hot dog. Whereas if you go over towards the Midwest, out towards Chicago, it might sound more like hot dog. The difference is pretty subtle, but that is the difference. Basically, the more downstate you go, the less fronted that short O in hot is going to be, and the more raised that O sound in dog is going to be. And then as you go upstate, the dog sound comes down to about how I pronounced it right there, and that vowel in hot moves forward. And once you go out to the Midwest, then it gets very fronted, that hot vowel, and the dog vowel kind of just lives where it lives for most American dialects. Or at least that's my analysis. I'm not a linguist. I just do this as a hobby. This is just something I'm interested in. But that seems to be what the common trend is to me as a local of the area. So there's actually a third thing that I forgot to mention in this little list of differences between upstate and downstate linguistics. And that third thing is the amount of linguistic diversity that there is. So, living in one of the cities of upstate New York, you're going to get a lot of different people from all different walks of life. People from different countries, people from different areas of, North America, or even different areas of the United States. You're going to get people who have a different first language than English. And all these things are going to add to a lot of accent diversity. However, the amount of that kind of diversity that you see in upstate New York, it doesn't even compare to New York City. New York City's got millions of people. Like, it makes up like the majority of the population of the state. You know what I mean? You're going to get so many people who speak so many different languages, and that diversity is a huge factor in the way that city sounds. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there because it's a really important thing to mention. Another funny little thing about dialect that you hear in upstate New York is that a lot of the people in the upstate cities in the northern tier, Rochester, Buffalo, Syracuse, and Albany, a lot of them wish they were from New York. And so they try a little bit too hard to talk like they're from New York. So funny enough, that kind of influences people's dialects. People are actively trying to sound like they're from the city because, there's a certain amount of like prestige and coolness that gets associated with the city. But obviously, that isn't the case for a lot of people. And most of the people who are trying a little bit too hard to sound like they're from the city, usually it's not actually in their pronunciation and in their accent. Usually it's just in what slang and colloquialisms they use. These are the people that are a lot more likely to hear, their favorite celebrity from New York use a certain slang term, and then now they just pick it up the very next day, even though nobody in this area actually uses that word. And yeah, I'm not really trying to diss those people, you can do what you want, you live your own life. But for some of those people who do, actively try to sound like they're from downstate, a lot of the time it's not going to fully manifest in their accent. It might, but a lot of the time it just manifests in what slang terms they use. Once again, I'm not a researcher. This is not confirmed. This is just my, analysis of what I see living in upstate New York. Another interesting little tidbit is that the raising of that thought vowel that I talked about earlier, that seems to be more identifiable in the cities of upstate New York, whereas the more into the countryside you get, the less raised that thought vowel seems to be. When I listen to someone from the countryside of upstate New York talk, they'll still have a lot of those vowel shift characteristics, but that one change in their thought vowel might not be as pronounced as it is when I talk to someone in the cities. Another thing you might hear in the area is we smooth out our mouth diphthong whenever it's unstressed. So if I'm at work, for example, and I'm about to go home, I'm going to say it like that. Yeah, I'm about to head out right now. The word out has the diphthong because it's stressed, but the word bouta doesn't really. It's just I'm about to head home. But that's like a very minor characteristic, and I'm sure that's noticeable like all across the country. So yeah, that pretty much sums up most of our characteristics in the area. And if you've been watching this video all the way till the end, congratulations, you just got an awesome sample of what someone from the area sounds like. I've always kind of talked with this accent. I've always felt comfortable talking with this accent. And ever since learning about the vowel shift, I may have leaned into it a little bit, just a little bit. But nah, on the real though, I'm just more conscious of the fact that I'm doing it now. I've kind of always done this, but now it's just like a switch that I turn on in my brain where I'm just like, oh wait, I'm doing the vowel shift right now. That's interesting. Or I'll be listening to people and like I can hear them doing it too, and I'll be like, oh yeah, they're definitely from this area. Or like, oh, they merged their short O in their thought vowel. Like they must be from out of town. Man, I am such a nerd. But yeah, so I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Hopefully, you got something useful out of it. You learned a little bit about an area that you might not have known about. Or if you know me personally and you're watching my video, you just learned a little bit more about where you're from and how you talk. So, congrats. Or maybe you didn't learn anything. Maybe you already knew this and you're like, man, this bozo's just repeating knowledge to me that I already knew. And hey, if that's the case, more power to you. I hope it was at the very least entertaining. So yeah, I'm probably going to make more videos about linguistics soon because I'm really passionate about this right now. I've really just enjoyed looking into language and how it works. And I've actually learned a really small constructed language called Tokipona. So I might be making some videos about that soon. Stay tuned. Unless you don't care, in which case, don't stay tuned. Well, yeah, thank you guys for watching. Leave a like if you want to, if you enjoyed the video, and I will catch you next time.